Sit back down and shut your trap. It's time for
Keeping it sports with them three.
Are you ready?
Are you ready?
Well, I'll need some beer.
Are you ready?
You have to ask me nicely.
Come on now, don't be bashful.
Are you ready? Are you ready for
Place for the best sports talk and news surrounding each league.
I can prove it with my usual flawless logic.
Hey man, this time they'll do it my way.
What's your name again?
And now, here's your host, M3, Mike Rosansky. Coming to you from Freehold, New Jersey. It's time for Keeping It Sports with M3, normally powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm, of course, your host, Mike M3 Rosansky, coming to you here on this Tuesday, the 30th and final day of the month of June for 2026. Hope you're all doing well out there. Hope you're all off to a great start in your day, whatever it is you may be doing. As I got a lot I want to talk about here, a lot I want to get off my mind today. Of course, you know I'm a Yankee fan, and I'm frustrated with what I've seen from the team over the last week. Give you some thoughts on that coming up. A lot going on in the NBA with trades taking place as we're just now mere hours away from the unofficial start to NBA free agency, the legalized tampering period that they refer to it. We also have an end for now to the Brendan Sorsby saga. We'll give you some thoughts on that a little bit later on. But there's one team in this area that has been very fortunate over the last couple of months. And no, I'm not talking about your NBA champion New York Knicks. I'm not even talking about the New York Giants with them getting John Harbaugh as their head coach. No, that team that has been extremely fortunate is the New York Mets. The New York Mets, who are abysmal. The New York Mets, who are hideous to watch play baseball. They've lost 7 of their last 8 games. They're completely tail spinning after a year where they missed the postseason by 1 game, falling short to the Cincinnati Reds, losing on the final day of the season to the Miami Marlins. A New York Mets team who has the highest payroll in the National League East, second highest in the National League and the majors, to only the LA Dodgers, have the richest single owner in all of baseball in Steve Cohen. And they sit here today, 15 games under 500. And when you're a team with expectations, when you're a team that your owner comes out in spring training and says the baseline, we got to get to at least here for this season to be a success, is making the playoffs. And you're 15 games under 500, last in your division, and have only a few teams worse than you in the National League. Of course, you're going to look for a scapegoat. And they did that this past Friday when they gutlessly fired manager Carlos Mendoza. In a way, when you think about it, they kind of did the guy a favor by firing him now. With 85 games down and about 77 to go in the season, he doesn't have to deal with the final 3 months of this crap that's going to be an absolute ghost town at Citi Field. Especially when you watch the way that they played against the Cubs last week, getting swept, having a 6-error game in the second half of the day-night doubleheader. or what they did last night with Juan Soto misplaying a fly ball by George Springer into an inside the park home run, him and Benj throwing the ball around the field. This team having absolutely no pitching whatsoever. I mean, McClain's looked okay recently, but you're getting 5-inning starts out of Freddie Peralta. You don't have Clay Holmes. Kodai Senga is unpitchable. You have to put him and his 10 ERA out in the bullpen. Sean Manaea has not looked great. This team is an unwatchable mess. They have no pitching whatsoever. Half their lineup has spent a large chunk of the season on the IL. But sure, yeah, let's blame this all on Carlos Mendoza because we need a scapegoat in this. Let me ask you, is Carlos Mendoza the one that is paying a $375 million collective balance tax, second highest total in baseball? No, he is not. Is Carlos Mendoza the one that fired the entire coaching staff outside of the manager at the end of last year? No, he is not. Is he the one that made a roster shakeup that was almost inexplicable to believe during the offseason? No, he is not. That would be the work of your owner, Steve Cohen, and more importantly, your president of baseball operations, David Stearns. David Stearns, who's been treated and hailed as this boy genius, as this guy that can do no wrong, seemingly can walk on water, yet his first season at the helm of the Mets, yeah, they go to the NLCS. But after that, they've gone backwards each year. Last year, missing the postseason, they decided to clear house with most of the coaching staff. Hell, he doesn't even have the decency to meet with these guys in person. He calls them all on the phone and acted like it was, him the victim here, and that it was such a hard thing on him when it was really a hard thing on the guys that he was firing. Will it be hitting coach Eric Chavez, who's recently come out on a podcast blasting him? Or Jeremy Hefner? Jeremy Hefner, who the pitching laboratory, remember that? You got rid of him. He's gone down to Atlanta. There you have a top 5 ERA in baseball, and they've had nothing but pitching injuries all year long. Seemingly everyone in their staff has been on the IL at one point in time. But he decided to clear house with all of those guys. And then when you look at what he's done with this roster, it has been an abject failure. It has been an outright disastrous mess what Stearns has done with the roster. You cleared off some guys that were franchise stalwarts with this team. Yeah, maybe it was time to move on from some guys like, say, a Jeff McNeil, who has shown since going to the Athletics that his season last year wasn't a fluke. He's probably on the downturn of his career. But you traded away the longest tenured Met, Brandon Nimmo, to bring in Marcus Semien, and Nimmo has been solid for the Texas Rangers. Well, Marcus Semien has been an outright disaster. He is not hitting. He has been awful defensively at second base. He was amongst the biggest problems in that 6-error game on Thursday against the Cubs. Now he's on the IL. You let go of possibly the most popular Met in Pete Alonso, who, even despite a slow start to the season, has come on and put up typical Pete Alonso-like numbers for the Baltimore Orioles, and I get it. You don't want to give him 5 years. because you're worried that he was going to be a future DH, and you're probably going to need that spot for Juan Soto at some point. But at some point, you got to realize you got to do something for the fans. The fans absolutely loved this guy. And you've seen this multiple times throughout this season where the fan base has been chanting Pete's name at games in disgust with how badly this team has played. The one move that he didn't make that he's gotten fortunate with was Edwin Diaz. And listen, you can't predict injuries, but he's been out for a couple of months now. Really has been no help for the Dodgers so far, but they haven't missed a beat without him. But the guys that he's brought in here, Simeon, trash on the IL. Luis Robert Jr. historically has been an injury-filled career, hasn't lived up to his potential that we all thought he was going to reach when he had 30 home runs just a couple of seasons ago. You bring in Jorge Polanco to play first base, who has never played first base more than 2 innings in his entire professional career. He's been on the IL for the last couple of months. Bo Bichette looked like a disaster at the beginning, started to hit a little bit, but you brought him in to play third base, and he's had to play mostly shortstop due to the Lindor injury. And why were all of these moves made? Run prevention. Well, it's hard to prevent runs when you guys playing out of position, playing crappy defense, and a pitching staff that looks like outright trash. I mean, they're thanking the baseball gods that the month of June is about to end, but I don't think that's going to change anything with this pitching staff. When you don't have Holmes, Noel McLean has looked human most of the season. Senga's been trash. Manaya's been trash. Peralta gives you no length whatsoever, and that was hailed as your big move of the offseason. David Stearns bringing in his guy, Freddie Peralta, the guy that he drafted and developed, guy that thinks he's going to get a big long-term deal in free agency, but not with his 4.5 ERA and inability to go long in starts. You traded away David Peterson. You better hope that the Cubs don't turn him around. And name one good move. I'll sit here and wait. One good move that David Stearns has made, other than possibly firing Buck Showalter, who we know has never won anything in his life, and Mendoza has, in 3.5 years, already had more success in the postseason than Buck Showalter ever has. You can't. It's really impossible. Maybe you want to talk about signing Luke Weaver as a free agent, especially if you trade him at the deadline in a few weeks and are able to get some kind of prospect back from him, because he's been able to turn back into the form he had with the Yankees prior to injury last year. But right now, you look at everything Stearns has done, it's been abysmal. It's been awful. And you can't even say that he's this brainiac genius, because the Milwaukee Brewers have not missed a beat without him. People, they sit here today with the second best record in the National League, whereas the Mets have the second worst record in the National League. Now, maybe this move to bring in David Stearns, a guy that they waited for 2-3 years to get, and were just patiently waiting for his contract to run out in Milwaukee, maybe that was a move by the suggestion of Major League Baseball to kind of reel in Steve Cohen, because there was a lot of fear when he came in here that he was going to be even worse than George Steinbrenner when it came to his spending habits and dragging players away from other teams in free agency. So far, he's really only had that one drunk sailor move in signing Juan Soto to that 16-year contract. And we're already seeing and hearing the problems that creates in that locker room, how you essentially have a 25-1 situation when it comes to that roster. He's so far separated from his teammates. Clear him and Francisco Lindor can't stand each other, and he gets preferential treatment to the rest of the roster. Pretty much has a handler in the clubhouse that is patting him on the back even when he's having a bad game, telling him how great he is. And people, wake up. This New York Mets team is not the fault of Carlos Mendoza. And hell, here in 2026, with how analytically driven the sport is, there's very few things that the manager of a baseball team has true control over. Most of these managers, unless you're a guy like Dave Roberts or Alex Cora when he was with the Red Sox, unless you're a guy that has had success at the highest level and is a proven winner, most of these guys are handpicked by the general manager or president of baseball operations to essentially be a puppet in the dugout and be a guy that makes moves based off a script that's given to them by a bunch of nerds in a back room down the hallway from the dugout who have never stepped foot on a baseball field a second in their lives. Carlos Mendoza is a baseball lifer. And I'm not going to sit here and try to paint some rosy picture for you all to say that he was a great manager or did anything awe-inspiring, because he probably did deserve to lose his job earlier than this. If you were going to make a true impact like this and think it could affect your season, you should have done it back in April, around the same time that the Phillies did the same with Rob Thompson, and they've taken off and played well with Don Mattingly as their manager. To do this now at the end of June feels like a total scapegoat move. And what do you expect to accomplish with Andy Green as a manager? Andy Green, a guy who was an outright failure as the manager of the San Diego Padres several years ago. It's mind-blowing what you see from this Mets team, how bad they are with the kind of players that they thought they were bringing in on this roster. And the fact that they hailed this guy, David Stearns, as this boy genius, as the guy that was going to save the Mets. But if anything, he's put them in a deep, abysmal hole. Because what is there to be excited about? I mean, Carson Bench, Ewing in the outfield? You got 16 years of Juan Soto here on his contract. And right now, outside of those two kids in the outfield and Nolan McLean in the starting rotation, there's not a lot to truly be excited about with this team going forward. And all of that is not Carlos Mendoza's fault. He's just being scapegoated here to cover up what is a bigger problem created by David Stearns and owner Steve Cohen. Like I said earlier, a lot of things I want to discuss today, a lot of things I want to get off my mind. I'll get to the Yankees at some point throughout this podcast, but there's going to be a lot of things to talk about when it comes to the NBA, as we are just mere hours away now from the start of the legalized tampering period in NBA free agency. Give us thoughts on that, mixing some thoughts on the decision by the NFL against Brendan Sorsby last week. Plenty to get to in the next about 45 minutes or so here. Glad you guys could join me once again this week. And like I tell you, each and every single, I was going to say Monday, but I'm once again realizing it's Tuesday. Brain cramp. But like I tell you, each and every single week at this time, we'll go with it that way. Please sit back, relax, hell, put your feet up and feel like it, and continue keeping it sports with M3.
I'll be back.
Well, it finally happened about a week ago. The move that we had long been waiting for, the move that we had long been expecting, has finally gone down with the Milwaukee Bucks trading Giannis Antetokounmpo to the Miami Heat. This move on paper, you like it if you're a Bucks fan. I mean, it's disappointing trading away a franchise legend, a guy that won you a championship not too long ago, but you get back a lot of pieces for the future. 3 first-round picks, including the 13th overall pick in last week's draft. You get back a lot of perimeter shooting led by Tyler Hero. You are getting the right to 1 pick swap in 2030. I mean, start scouting middle school and high school basketball right now with some of these picks, because they're not going to be in true impact until 2030 and 2031. But if you're a New York Knicks fan right now, you're looking at this and saying, holla frickin' Hallelujah. Because you've now eliminated 2 teams, really potentially 3 teams, from being true, legitimate threats to you in the Eastern Conference. I mean, the Bucks, they're a dead team walking for the next several years. You're not going to win anything major with Tyler Hero being your number 1 option. He, on a winning team, is more of a number 3 option. And while they got all of these draft picks, they're not going to be using them until the 2030s at the earliest, unless they trade them at some point in the future to get that next disgruntled star. And I'm not sure who really wants to go to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. But you also take the Heat out of the mix of things here, because yes, they get Giannis. You bring in Bobby Portis as a backup big off the bench to go with Bam Adebayo. But look at that roster. You've depleted them of all of the perimeter shooting, taken away Hero, taken away Jaime Jaquez, taken away Clay Ware. And that now they've got to replenish that roster again around these 2 big talents in Giannis and Bam, so that there's going to be some serious roster gymnastics that Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra are going to have to take care of there, even despite getting the big fish that they wanted. And you also potentially take the Boston Celtics out of the mix here of being a true contender, being a true threat to you. With the fact that for the second time in recent memory, they had been engaging in trade talks that involved Jalen Brown being a piece in the mix of those talks. You can't turn around and look at the guy and say, oh yeah, we were involving you in trade talks, but it was to go get multi-time MVP Giannis Antetokounmpo. You got a guy here that was a finals MVP for your franchise just a couple of years ago. A guy that felt he should have won league MVP this year with how he kept you guys in the number 2 spot in the Eastern Conference without Jason Tatum, a guy who's not a passive player, that wants that smoke, is always bringing the heart and intensity that you need, and was keeping this team at a top level, even despite not having a second star on that team all year long. That's why a lot of people criticize him for some of the things that he's been saying and doing on social media, and maybe it comes off as a little bit babyish, but I can't blame him. If I'm feeling unwanted or unsupported by someone that I gave my heart and soul to, I'd want out of there as well. So I don't think there's any way, shape, or form you can come back to this season with Jalen Brown as a member of the Boston Celtics. And if you trade him, what do you really have on that team? You have Jason Tatum, who you're hoping is back to full strength after coming back early from that Achilles tear. And then your second best player is Derek White. Listen, you're telling me Derek White is the fourth or fifth best player on a championship level team? Okay, I'll buy that. But the number 2 guy on a championship contending team? Oh, hell no. And you're going to watch teams target him and pick him apart as the number 2 guy on the Boston Celtics. So now you have the Heat getting Giannis, but depleting their depth. The Bucks completely out of the mix here. The Celtics in a state of disarray with potentially trading Jalen Brown. And then you look at some of the other contenders in the East. The Cavaliers are waiting to figure out the James Harden situation after he opted out of his contract and seeing if they have a snowball's chance of bringing LeBron James back to Cleveland for part 3. What are the Pacers going to be after a full year and a half without Tyrese Halliburton? Do the Pistons take that next step? Are they going to get that second scorer for Cade Cunningham? You've got Orlando, who was thought to do big things this year, but had to settle for making the play-in and blew a 3-1 lead in the first round to the Detroit Pistons. Honestly, the potential toughest threat for the New York Knicks might be the team that just went out there and made another attempt at a home run swing, as within the last hour, Shams Charania of ESPN has reported that the rumored trade between the Clippers and the Toronto Raptors is going to go down, as Toronto is bringing back Kawhi Leonard in a trade that will send them Brandon Ingram, 2 first-round picks, a pick swap, 2 second-round picks, and Grady Dick to the Clippers, and bring back the former Finals MVP, who is beloved there, is a legend there, just based off one incredible, legendary season before hitting free agency and dipping off to the West Coast. Now, you know, with Kawhi, there's always going to be the will he or won't he play pain in the ass, because this past season he played 65 regular season games. It was only the second time in the last 8 years that he's played at least 60 games. So that's always going to be a problem that you have to deal with when it comes to Kawhi. But even despite the fact he's getting up there a little bit in age, he's 35 years old, not exactly a fossil, but with his health history, it's something that you do have to be concerned about. He's still got at least 2 prime years left. Still a guy that is going to bring it when you get to postseason time, and you add him to that team with young, hungry players. And you did have to move Ingram, but you kept the rest of the roster intact. A team that took the Cleveland Cavaliers to 7 games. With Kawhi there, this could be a team to reckon with in the Eastern Conference. And listen, this is just the first of many dominoes that is set to fall in the next several hours and days to come, as we're going to start hitting the real nitty-gritty when it comes to NBA free agency.
I'll be back.
Listen, when it comes to the Knicks, I know that James Dolan said that they're not going to go over the second apron, which in today's NBA you can't do. It's really punitive to teams. But you've got to be happy with what you've seen so far from this Knicks team. They're re-signing Jose Alvarado after he opted out of his player option for next year. They gave him a 3-year contract. You're going to bring back Landry Shamet, which you thought he was going to be walking out the door, but he took less money to come back here. And this is a guy that clearly shows he loves New York. He's dealt with some injuries the last couple of years, but was a key role player on this team in the postseason. Yes, you're going to likely lose Mitchell Robinson in free agency, and it's going to hurt considering he was the longest tenured Knick. But remember, he was a guy that you had to really baby through this season the last couple of years with his injury concerns. And he's just, with his limitations, both offensively and foul shooting wise, and the minutes he could play per game and the number of games you can play him, probably not worth giving a multi-year contract to. And you could find another guy to be your backup center behind Karl Anthony Towns that will fit in financially. So that will sting, but it's a move that you're definitely going to be able to get past. But as we're going on here, as we're getting closer and closer to free agency, you're seeing more and more dominoes start to fall. Take yesterday afternoon, as the Memphis Grizzlies finally said enough is enough and showed Ja Morant the door. A couple of years ago, Ja Morant probably would have gotten you 2, maybe 3 first-round draft picks, or at least 2 first-round draft picks and a pick swap somewhere along the way. Yesterday, they gave him away. And all due respect to the likes of Jeremy Grant and Chris Murray, but this was a flat-out giveaway. You didn't get any building blocks for this team. You didn't get any draft picks. This was just the Grizzlies organization saying, bye Felicia, to a guy that has been, very talented since being selected 2nd overall in 2019. But he's also been largely a pain in the ass to deal with, both on the court and especially off the court, with some of the gun troubles that he's had, the immaturity issues he's shown, the nonsense involving his dad. So you were at your best of moving on from. Now, the question becomes, what do the Trailblazers do with him there? Because you still got Drew Holiday there. You still have Dame Lillard, who's going to probably come back next year. And does that look like a team there that is really, built the right direction to win games? Kind of a questionable fit. It looked more on the Trailblazers end of things, trying to buy a low stock and hoping for a big boom, hoping to just make some noise here and make some headlines. And of course, the team that's always trying to make headlines is the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers who had to really bite their tongue, swallow hard last week as they signed Austin Reeves to a 4-year, $185 million max contract. While you give Austin Reeves a lot of credit here, the fact this is a guy that was an undrafted player. More or less, this is a rags to riches kind of story here. When you talk about a guy who's undrafted, you expect nothing out of those kind of players. And through hard work and determination, he's turned himself into a very solid, successful NBA player. Look at just last year. He scored 23 points per game, shot almost 50% from the field, a career high in three-point percentage at 36%. He did miss some time when he was sidelined with the calf and oblique injuries late in the year at a time when the Lakers were rolling. But this is a good deal for him. Not so great for the Lakers. You probably wish you could have gotten this done about a year ago, and maybe you would have only got him for about 60% of this contract. But it's clear that this team is now building around Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves. Now, you're going to have to work on building the front court there and building up some size there, because this leaves a lot to be desired defensively, a guard pairing of Austin Reeves and Luka Doncic. I don't know if you really want DeAndre Ayton coming back there, or if you think meeting with Jalen Duren today is your answer in the front court. But the Lakers got some work to do around those guys, and they're going to have even more work to do now that we're seeing that LeBron James is moving on from the Los Angeles Lakers. As his agent, Rich Paul, announced earlier today that LeBron James will be playing elsewhere next season. It's a day where the Lakers take a step back and they take some slings and arrows from the social media trolls, take some slings and arrows from the media, but realize that they had to let this happen, both on the front of not spending $50 million a year on a 41-year-old, soon to be 42-year-old, but also realizing that in the future, they may have to deal with Rich Paul. He doesn't just represent LeBron James. So they had to let them come out of this looking like the good guys. Let them come out of this looking like the ones that are saying, yeah, we're moving on from you. You're not moving on from us. So this is a move that, quite frankly, I'm not surprised by it. I figured that if the Lakers were the one announcing the ultimate choice or giving some truth serum, that they would tell you that they wanted internally to move on from LeBron James, probably earlier than this, and truly have the team built around Luka Doncic. But now it's going to be fun to see where LeBron's future lies. And you're already seeing the rumors. You're already seeing the speculation on where that future could lie with some of the moves that are being made by certain teams out there. We talked about earlier, James Harden has opted out of his player option for next year. Do we see LeBron and the Cavs part 3? Or the option that I think is more realistic and has been talked about for a long time, and that's LeBron James jumping on with the Golden State Warriors to play with Steph Curry and Draymond Green. And financially, they could make it work, as Draymond has opted out of his player option to give the Warriors the flexibility to pursue LeBron James. We'll see if the other reports come true and they decide to pursue a trade for Anthony Davis. Would probably have to include a contract like Jimmy Butler and some future draft picks to get it done. But clearly the Warriors think that it's 2016 and not 2026, as that will be a very, very old team when you take into LeBron turning 42 at some point this year, AD, Steph Curry, and Draymond Green all being in their mid to late 30s. You have Al Horford, who re-signed over the last week. But you still have some young guys on the team with Podziemski, with Moody on the bench. They drafted Yaxel Yenneborg last week. So they do have some youth there. But the majority of the cast on that team is going to be older players. And for 1 year, it will be a fascinating watch, will be a really fun team to watch. But is it enough to get by the likes of the San Antonio Spurs and the Oklahoma City Thunder in the Western Conference? Those are the teams that is the standard bearers of the Western Conference right now. Those are the teams that you're going to be judged against in trying to get by Wemby and the Spurs, trying to get by SGA and the Thunder. And while the Warriors would be really, really good and really, really fun to watch with LeBron James, we also know that you're not going to be getting LeBron playing many, if any, back-to-backs during the season. And the last several years, he has not gotten through the season without some kind of nagging injury. Hell, he'll play his 55 to 60 games, but be worn out by the time that you get to the postseason and be essentially dragging himself through a playoff series. So while the idea on paper seems fun, seems cool to see him potentially as a Golden State Warrior, I don't see it playing out as them being a true championship contending team.
I'll be back.
I know the NBA tells us this nonsense that the new league year doesn't start until next Monday, but they've got to throw us a bone here and put an end to the insanity, put an end to the nonsense that is the NBA draft. And I'm not talking about the draft itself. I'm talking about what goes on during the draft, where every single year, and it's laughable that this is still a thing, every single year you see multiple players drafted walking up to the stage, handed the cap of the team that they were just selected by, but they're not even actually going to play for that team because that pick was either traded previously or traded on draft night to another team, and the deal can't become official until the start of the new league year. So last week, take for example, you got a kid drafted by the New York Knicks, but as he's walking up to the stage to shake hands with Adam Silver, he's getting handed the Knicks hat, and you read his lips as he's looking at the screen saying, "I just got traded." And he's going to be a Los Angeles Laker, yet he's going to forever have his draft moment, his moment up there, which should be the greatest moment of his young life, of him wearing a New York Knicks hat. And who knows what will happen in his future, but he probably will never play for the New York Knicks. And that's just one in many, many examples. We say this every damn year. Just make the trades as far as draft picks official. You know that player is going to go to that team. I don't know why you got to wait till the start of the new league year. It's understandable for free agent and contract signings. But if two teams agree to a trade, make the deal official that moment once all of the medical stuff goes through. Don't have this nonsense go down where they got to wait, 3 weeks before a trade can become official. I mean, come on. It just looks stupid. It makes you look very minor leaguish. It makes you look like a clown show. And you're the NBA. You're the second most popular sport in this country. Do better. And talk about do better. Listen, I know there's about 5 of us out there, but to my fellow Brooklyn Net fans, does it get any worse than right now? I mean, let's take stock of what the last 5 years have been like for us. All right. KD's toe was across the line in Game 7 against the Bucks, coming inches away from what would have been the greatest shot in franchise history, would have sent us to the Eastern Conference Finals, and we probably would have been the ones representing the East in the NBA Finals, not the Milwaukee Bucks. And then from there, that group slowly started to fall apart. James Harden forced his way out. Kyrie Irving and all his nonsense forced his way out. And once they were gone, there was no other recourse but to trade Kevin Durant. And since then, there's been nothing to celebrate, nothing to be happy about with the Brooklyn Nets. You stupidly took on the contract of Ben Simmons for a couple of years, and he was either injured or too afraid to shoot the basketball. Honestly, there's been nothing to drag you to a television. It feels like babysitting half the time when I'm watching them play basketball games these last several years. I mostly watch the games to hear the banter of the announce team. But what happened last week was just another kick right below the belt for us. It's bad enough that we went from having one of the top 3 odds to get the first overall pick in this year's draft to falling all the way to number 6 overall. But then the draft actually fell our way. Sure, DeBonza and Darren Peterson came off at 1 and 2. You had some of the other top talent going in this draft early. But the guy that all of us Net fans had our heart set on, Darius Acup Jr. out of Arkansas, we didn't think was going to make it to number 6 overall. But foolishly, the Los Angeles Clippers selected Keaton Wagler at number 5 overall and left him sitting right there for us to pick. Such an easy move for Sean Marks to make. And what does he do? No, let's take Michael Brown out of Louisville at 6th overall. Michael Brown, a 20-year-old who dealt with back problems all year last year, and while has potential, also has injury potential. Whereas Darius Acup Jr., you're talking about box office. You're talking about a guard that has superstar attached to him, is going to be a guy that, even if he doesn't stay with the Kings for his entire career, is going to be a highlight reel nonstop through his NBA career, and just has that heart, guts, and determination from a guard that you look at it and you say, I don't care how limited he is in his height. I mean, he's small for a guard at 6'2", but hell, we just saw a guard at 6'1" win finals MVP. And would have been something that, I don't know, made things more exciting there over on Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn. Now, what is there to be excited about? What, trading for Julius Randle? I've seen teams do that before. And while there's some success early on, I've also seen it where he's just an outright pain in the ass to deal with for the overwhelming large part of his time there. I don't know. It's just hard to wrap my mind around. And then you watch the Nets draft room, and they're celebrating like they won the NBA title. I'm like, dude, come on. Like, what the hell are you doing? How does Sean Marks still have a job? He's gotten to hire and fire multiple head coaches and has won absolutely nothing in almost 10 years on the job, yet he continues to survive. It's just amazing how some people have the same lives as a cat. And then, speaking of what are we doing here? Like, can someone tell me the game plan as far as the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Charlotte Hornets so far this offseason? Because I'm left scratching my head here, and I'm Not quite sure what these teams are doing. Not quite sure what either of these franchises' respective game plans are. Timberwolves, they knock off the Denver Nuggets in the playoffs. Gave a bit of an early scare to the San Antonio Spurs. Even got Wembanyama so frustrated that he was kicked out of the game. And now they're starting to trade off all of their size on that team outside of Rudy Gobert. Not only did they trade Julius Randle in a 3-team deal with the Nets and the Bulls and only get back the 33rd overall pick in the draft last week, but in that trade, they watched Nick Claxton go to the Bulls. And then a couple of days later, they make a trade with the Charlotte Hornets that sent Naz Reid to Charlotte. So now you're left with only Rudy Gobert as your only big man there. And as we've seen in the Western Conference, it's a size race right now. You've got some towerous men that you've got to go after with Wembanyama, with Chet Holmgren. So you need as much size as you potentially can. I mean, we saw in the finals how you throw size and throw physicality at Wembanyama. That's the way to stop him. That's the way to hinder his attack, his offensive abilities. And you trade away probably your 2 best, most complete big men on that team. Didn't make a lot of sense to me in what they're doing. And then in the case of Charlotte just had one of its most successful seasons in recent memory. And they got off to a hideous start this year, came into the new calendar year at 11-23, and then won 32 out of their next 45 games, were one of the hottest teams in the league from January 1st on, got themselves into the postseason, and now they're starting to trade away a lot of the players that got them to this spot. First, with trading LaMelo Ball to the Timberwolves, they get back Naz Reid as well as a boatload of draft picks. But once again, those are draft picks that they're not going to be using anytime soon. They're not getting any of those picks until 2033, the first of the unprotected picks that they get. And then they got a pick swap in 28, 29, and 30. But who knows if they're going to even want to do those pick swaps if their pick is not worse than the Minnesota Timberwolves. So I don't exactly get what the point is in trading LaMelo Ball. Yes, he's dealt with some injuries in recent memory. He's missed over 100 games in the last couple of years. But this past year, he was healthy. He showed you when he's on the court, he's a really good offensive player. And, I guess they more so want to focus with building this team around Con Knippel and Brandon Miller. And I don't know, a team that has not been good in recent memory, I would figure that you want to keep those pieces that got you to this point rather than subtract it from it. You don't have to pay Con Knippel or Brandon Miller just yet. They're still on their rookie deals. So you could have kept that group together and continued to build with them, maybe bring in a veteran big man. Maybe if you wanted to use some of your draft capital from when you traded Miles Bridges later in the week and got in Naz Reid from the Timberwolves still. But the move, I don't know, it just doesn't make sense. These teams who are not used to success making some really questionable moves here. And they better hope that those picks are in good places. And as I said, start scouting the middle school and high school classes now and see what you can get in the 2030s.
I'll be back.
finally came to an end. Finally, one of the endless, seemingly sagas that became almost exhausting at times to talk about has come to an end. As the NFL announced last week, they will not be holding a supplemental draft this summer, which means that the now former quarterback at Texas Tech, Brendan Sorsby, will not be playing in the NFL this coming year and essentially have to sit out a full year in preparation for the 2027 NFL draft. Now, let's be fair here, though. The NFL comes across as complete hypocrites here when they put out their statement, put out their letter sent to Brendan Sorsby and his representation saying, quote, "Your petition filed 3 business days before the deadline without any supporting information or documentation, and only after abandoning your recent litigation efforts to avoid NCAA sanctions does not provide a basis for the league to alter those plans." His application carries with it a lot of issues and core of the game integrity issues. You might as well have come out and said that we're banning you from the NFL this year. This is their way of, without him being on a team, suspending him from playing NFL football this season. And they come across as hypocrites because you watch any NFL broadcast, not just games, but pregame shows, halftime shows. Hell, NFL Live on ESPN right now. I'm sure you'll see something on the bottom of the screen. Everything with the NFL 24/7, they're promoting these gambling sites. Whether you want to talk about FanDuel or the sports books or whatever, ESPN bets, all of these gambling sites they're in bed with. So, they pick and choose how they want to support gambling. They won't let the players gamble, but they got no problem being business partners with all of these gambling places. And Brandon Sorsby, in his own right, is no angel. He's got a lot of issues he needs to work on, and the kid made over 9,000 bets in a 4-year span, including on the teams that he played for. You think that I'm buying that after just one stint in rehab that the guy is completely clean? I mean, I, like everyone else as a human being, root for him to better himself and right himself and just have a better way in society, and hope that he can get over this addiction, because it's not just a habit, it's an addiction, what he was doing as far as gambling, no matter how big or small the wagers were. But he, quite frankly, made his own bed here and now has to live with the consequences of these actions. And neither side, quite frankly, comes away from this looking very good. And you wonder what teams are going to think about him when they evaluate him at the draft combine next year, because that's the next opportunity that they're going to have to look at this guy. He's not going to be able to play at the CFL. They've already blocked him from playing there. The UFL, their season has already ended, so I don't know what other options he has. I mean, his representation, they can come out all they want and say that they're filing a grievance and that this is a violation of the CBA. I mean, what grounds do you have to stand on? You're not a player in the NFL. You don't have the backing of the NFL union. So there's nothing you can do. You made your bed. Now you got to sleep in it, kid. And you know what's funny about this whole thing? I'm not to an addiction is funny. But when you think about it, the next time he throws a football, and I'm talking about, real competitive situation, because I don't consider anything that happens at the scouting combine as competitive, is going to be next year in training camp for whatever team he's on. If he is selected by someone, assuming he's selected by someone in next year's draft, there's a chance that Brendan Sorsby throws a football to an NFL wide receiver in 2027 before we have a Major League Baseball season in 2027. Because with the stuff that has come out in the last week, I'm getting even more concerned about the potential of a labor war between the MLB and the MLB Players Association when their CBA comes up in early December. Especially when now in the latest proposal from the league, they're proposing a maximum contract length of 5 years for free agents and 6 years for teams to retain their own players. Also, no deferred contracts, qualifying offer gone, which that should be gone. That's the one thing here I agree with them on. And free agency for players older than 30 is after 5 years of team control. These players are never going to go for there being any kind of controlled length to a contract. I think the only sport that has that is the NHL, the NBA to a lesser degree, but who's signing a player in basketball beyond a 5-year contract? This is going to be ugly. This is going to be vicious. It's going to make both sides look bad, these negotiations. And it was already a very tense between the players and the owners before. And I fear for the worst when it comes to this negotiation. That's why I'm just trying to enjoy what we have in this 2026 baseball season. But at times, the New York Yankees are making it extremely hard. And listen, I try not to be one of those jump off a cliff Yankee fans. I try to realize that this is a 162 game season. There's going to be ebbs and flows to it. And when you look at the Yankees compared to the rest of the American League, they're probably the best team in the league, even despite the fact that they sit here today 3 games behind the Tampa Bay Rays in the loss column. But what you've watched from the Yankees in the last week, it's just hard to watch. And I'm not talking about the 5-game losing streak. Hell, losing streaks happen. Winning streaks happen. I'm more concerned about what I'm watching. And myself and the rest of the "we can't believe you're running it back" crowd are once again patting ourselves on the back here, because a lot of the issues and concerns that we had with the New York Yankees have come and raised their ugly heads once again. Whether it be with the defense on this team, the fact that in their mind, to get the best defensive unit out there, they're playing certain people out of position. Like, for example, you got your best defensive player for shortstop playing left field on most nights. You're playing Cody Bellinger, who's probably the best left fielder in the sport, in center field half the time to fit some of these kids and some of these role players in there, just to suffice it, Anthony Volpe, who can only play shortstop. You've got hideous play at the catcher position. It's bad enough that these guys can't hit, but now they're letting up pass balls. You're watching Ahmed Rosario, who's played third base over the last week because Ryan McMahon's been dealing with some kind of illness. And Rosario is good here or there for a game at third base, but as a full-time third baseman, he leaves a lot to be desired. And I haven't even touched upon the bullpen, which once again looks like a true hideous mess. And it's embarrassing that you have to baby a 100-mile-an-hour flamethrower in Camilo Doval through the season. But a lot of the problems that we thought were going to pop up with this Yankee team have been popping up. Bullpen, third base, shortstop, catcher. Hell, one night when it comes to Jazz Chisholm, he's sucking on a lollipop. The next night, he's getting ejected from a game. And then another night, like last night, he's getting clotheslined by his own outfielder and is now in concussion protocol. And yeah, I know the Yankees are dealing with some injuries right now. They've been without Stanton since, I don't even remember the last time he played. What, early May? They've been without Judge now for almost a month. Trent Grisham's been on the IL for a couple of weeks. You're without Max Fried. But even without those guys, there's enough talent on this team to win games. I mean, hell, before this stretch, they went to Detroit and won 2 out of 3. They were playing some really good baseball. They had a 3-game lead in the AL East, and in this 2-8 stretch that they've gone on, including losing 5 in a row, you've seen Tampa win 5 in a row and take control of the East. It's funny, these two teams for the last month and a half have jockeyed back and forth 3-game leads in this division. When one team starts to get hot, the other team just goes completely in the toilet. But even without those players that I mentioned, there's enough talent on this team to win games where you shouldn't be getting swept by the Boston Red Sox up in Boston. I don't care if it's in Fenway Park, Yankee Stadium, Freehold Township High School, my backyard, wherever the games are being played. You should not be getting swept by a Red Sox team that was double-digit games under 500 up until last week. That was coming into that series at 32-46, getting booed viciously by the Fenway faithful and having a run differential in the negatives. But you've given them something to feel good about on their season with your hideous play over the weekend. For a while there, Paul Goldschmidt was carrying this team. You couldn't expect that to last forever because he was essentially a security signing for this team. Break glass in case of emergency. Ben Rice has been in a hideous slump as of late. But even with that issue, you had enough in this lineup with Bellinger, with Dominguez, who's hit better ever since they actually started to let him face left-handed pitching. But there's no excuse for what you're getting out of third base, no excuse for the catering that you're doing for Anthony Volpe, and an outright embarrassment what you're getting out of catcher. I mean, what the hell happened to Austin Wells? He is an unplayable mess on this team right now. And then Jazz Chisholm, I'm not sure whether to bench him or to slap him up silly because he is the most immature player that you're ever going to find. And I thought it was bad with Gleyber Torres in his last couple of years. And Jazz Chisholm takes the cake for immaturity and shows why that at the end of this year, hopefully sooner, he's going to be a former Yankee. If someone came offering me something good at the trade deadline and I got the roster healthy and can play Caballero at second base, I'd trade his ass out of here because I'm not dealing with the nonsense anymore. Every day, it's something different with him. The lollipop, arguing with umpires, getting ejected by first base umpires. And now he's dealing with some concussion issue. But through it all, I still think the Yankees are the best team in the American League. And that's why it's frustrating watching the slop that they're putting out there on a baseball field, because you know that they're better than this. But we got to be patient here. We still got 78 games to go in this season. We still got a trade deadline where You hope that they swing for the fences here. You go out there, make the big move at catcher. Go bring in Ryan Jeffers to upgrade there. Make some sort of change at either second base, shortstop, or third base, and put Caballero somewhere in the infield and stop with the nonsense of him playing a corner outfield spot, which you know is one of his weaker positions. And then upgrade this bullpen. I saw they finally brought up Giovanni Cruz earlier today, and hopefully that's a help. Hopefully they actually let that kid pitch. But with this rotation, led by Schlittler, Cole, Rodon, a lineup that is Ben Rice, Goldschmidt, Cody Bellinger, Jason Dominguez, there's more than enough talent here to win, and more than enough talent to avoid this classic June swoon by the Yankees, and more than enough talent to keep themselves above water and not look like a sinking ship until Aaron Judge, Max Fried, and the rest of the cavalry arrive. And that, my friends, was Keeping It Sports with M3 for Tuesday, June 30th, 2026. Everyone, please have a great night. Have a fun, safe, happy, healthy week. Remember, folks, you have one life, so you might as well try to live it up to the fullest. And I'll talk to you guys again, same time, next week. Until then, peace.
We have to go. Good night, everybody. I have had enough of you. Thank you for all the fun. Thank you. Hey, shut up, will you?
I don't want to see you. I don't want to hear you. I don't want to smell you. Now leave. I'll be back.